Hello, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to our live conversation with Asad Ahmed and Ajmal Masroor. My name is Nusrat Mirza, and I am the Chief Executive of the Graham Layton Trust. I will hand over very shortly to the gentleman that you are here to see. But before I do, let me tell you a little bit about this charity. The Graham Layton Trust was started 35 years ago with a very simple purpose: to provide high quality free eye surgery for the poor and underprivileged of Pakistan. And we've been doing that across a network of 19 hospitals and 59 clinics. And I'm really proud to say that we have treated over 45 million patients to date. We usually treat about 3 million patients a year, but in this extraordinary year of the pandemic, those numbers have been a little lower. So we've treated about 2.3 million. We closed our hospitals very briefly for a period of about 3 weeks at the beginning of the pandemic in order to ensure that we could create COVID-safe environments at all our hospitals. And this meant implementing one-way systems, ensuring that people could safely social distance, ensuring that there were hand sanitizing facilities, and also, of course, making sure that there was enough PPE for our staff. And once that happened, we opened, and we have been open ever since, because the blind and the visually impaired need our help. You know, GLT was set up because it recognized the burden of blindness. It recognized the challenges faced by families and communities, but most importantly, it recognized that people just wanted to live independent and dignified lives. And for those who were affected by blindness and visual impairment and poverty, the cost of surgery and medication and care can just be overwhelming. And so that's where GLT steps in, provides a helping hand. And by providing good quality surgery and care, we can help people on their journey back to self-sufficiency. And so today we also ask for your help. There is, of course, always the need for funds. And with Ramadan approaching, I hope that you will remember us in your giving then. But also, please help us by telling your friends and families about the work that we do and our cause. And also, please help by connecting with us on social media. Anyway, that is enough from me. I think it is time to hand over to the people that you are here to see. So let me introduce your host. He is a Royal Television Society award-winning reporter and BAFTA-nominated BBC journalist and presenter. Welcome, Asad Ahmed.
Thank you, Nusrat.
And known to many of you, Ajmal has been a fundraiser and entertainer at many of our events, but he has also been a great friend and a great supporter of this cause. And when he told me about his new book, which incidentally I have read, I thought that there were many people who could benefit from his 20 years of experience as a relationship counsellor. He is, of course, also an imam and represents our community periodically on television. And I'm very pleased to welcome Ajmal Masroor. Gentlemen, over to you.
Nusrat, thank you very much for that introduction, very kind introduction. Thank you for those words about the Graham Layton Trust. So we're all up to speed with the amazing work you've done over the past 35 years. And I understand more than 45 million patients have been helped through the work of the charity, which is extraordinary, by giving them sight when perhaps they thought there was no chance for them to continue seeing the world around them. So thank you very much for that, Nusrat. It's my great pleasure to be here to speak to Ajmal Masroor, the author of this book, 10 Steps to Getting and Staying Married. It's an interesting title. It's an even more interesting read. Like Nusrat, I have read it cover to cover, and I actually read it in one sitting because I couldn't put it down. It was a really good read, and I'm really glad to have the opportunity to speak to Ajmal about the book today. And while we're having this chat, if there are any questions that you'd like to ask, then do submit your questions on YouTube. And well, I'll put those questions to Ajmal slightly later on in this session. But Ajmal, thank you very much for joining us today. And I'm going to come straight in on this because your book covers everything from the purpose of marriage to love, and even at the end, forbidden marriages, which I found very interesting to read. Tell us why you decided to write this book in the first place.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Asad, it's so good to see you, mashallah. Should I be worried? Should I be scared? Knowing that you are, mashallah, professional journalist with years and years of experience of asking really difficult questions to guests. Should I be worried or should I just relax?
No, you just relax. This is going to be a chat between us, and that's all it is. Very easy.
I'm very pleased to hear that. So, in the context of this chat, why did I choose to write this book? The answer is very simple, Asad. Many years ago, when I got married first time, and when I say first time, obviously there is a suggestion that I may have been married twice. Yes, my first marriage unfortunately ended in a divorce, and I learned very quickly that I failed in my first marriage because I was not ready for it. Nobody had prepared me for it. There were no guidance or a book that was suggested to me, and nobody told me to, hey, come and sit down and let me give you a heart-to-heart about all the ins and outs of marriages. Nothing. I got married. It's like me thrown in the deep end, and I had to learn it by myself. And unfortunately, I didn't learn very much because I made a misery of it. Within 2.5 years, my marriage ended up in a terribly bad divorce, sadly. And then I decided, actually, I'm an imam. I'm supposed to be learned. I'm supposed to know my faith very well. Why did I fail? So I went and I started hunting and looking for answers. And I came across a course which was advertised by the very interesting and known agency called the Relate, the marriage support agency. And the course was they were looking to recruit counselors and train them. And I applied and I was accepted. So I went and learned. For 3.5 years, I did my course. For 5 years, I became a relationship counselor for Relate, and my life was transformed. I learned, and I write this in my introduction of my book, that if I had known what I know now about marriage, I'll still be most likely married to my first wife.
And the one thing I've noticed about your book, and probably why I read it in one sitting, is that it is very engaging. It's very easy to read. It's very engaging. And you keep it interesting by, at the end of each chapter, you have tips, you have reflections, questions for the reader, and also exercises they can do where they can even judge for themselves whether they're ready to be married. And so it's a very interactive book, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And this is exactly what I felt was missing from my reading of many books out there in the market, especially the books that are focusing on our Muslim marriage and families. Books are very boring in many cases. You pick up a book, there is a Quranic verse, of course it's not boring, a hadith, of course it's not boring, but for people to be engaged, the way it's been presented has often been seen as boring. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to put this knowledge of Quran and hadith into real life experience, from my own experience, as well as the hundreds of couples that I've seen over the last 20 years, and create exercise, create reflection, create tips, things that people can live with. And there are also elements of laughter in that learning. If they're reading this book with their wife or their husband, I've been told that this is a great way of engaging. One couple recently wrote to me saying, we've been married for nearly 20 years. Both of us were married before. But what broke our first marriage, we've never discussed because it was a territory we never wanted to touch. But as soon as we got your book and read your introduction, we both sat down and we had a heart-to-heart about why our first marriage failed. And after 20 years of our marriage, we realized what we have learned from our first marriage and how lucky we are to be married to one another thanks to your book. So there you go.
And that's a real compliment, obviously, to you. And the book covers everything from thinking about whether you are ready for marriage, which I mentioned earlier, right through to being married for many years. And as you've just been talking about, how to keep that alive, that relationship alive. Let's start at the beginning. One golden tip you give in the book is you need to know that what you are offering before you ask what's on offer to you. Tell us a bit more about that, because when I read that, I thought that's really interesting. It's an interesting approach when you meet someone to not say, well, what are you going to do for me, but what am I going to do for you?
I'll share with you my own story. When I met my good wife, been married to her now for 20 years, I met her, and the first thing I said to her was, you may be thinking I've come here with a list of things that I'm looking for. Actually, no, that's not true. I've come here with a list of offerings. I'm willing to offer you a permanent and a stable and secure home that I will look after. I'm willing to give you companionship and friendship that nobody else will be able to give you. I will make sure if we have children, I provide for you and children without you ever having to work. I offered her 3 or 4 things outright. And I said, this is what I'm offering. What are you offering? She was like, oh, I didn't come ready for that. I came with a long list of things that I'm looking for. So she had to rethink the entire conversation. And I say to people, if you go with that selfish mindset, which is, I've got a long list of things I'm looking for, tick, 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 I'll marry her or marry him, you are most likely making the cardinal mistake that most people make, and that is they're not going deeper. One good story I'll tell you, I said, one great scholar from the Islamic history, there was an amazing scholar, but young, and could not find the perfect woman to marry. He was going around the world, couldn't find anybody. So one of his scholars said, I've got an amazing girl in this country, go. So he went. He met the girl and really liked her. Everything was perfect. So he sat with her and said, I've come a long way. I've met you. I've met your family. Everything is perfect. All my criteria for what I'm looking for, you tick all my boxes. Will you marry me? The lady turned around and said, dear scholar, I've read a lot about you. I've heard a lot about you. I'm very humbled. I'm very grateful. Yes, I tick all your boxes, but you tick none of mine. If you go around looking for tick boxes, I'm afraid you'll never be satisfied. So my approach to looking for a marital spouse is not tick boxes. It's to say to the person, here is what I'm offering. What can you offer? Can we create a space where we both can build something that works for both of us?
But the other reason you give for not having boxes to tick in your book and having a long list is that you say by having that, you might miss the person who's the right person for you as well.
Yes, and you straitjacket people into a box, into a set of things. I always say, look beyond what you see in front of you, the looks, the height, the size, the shape, the eye, the color of the eye, etc. All these are very shallow. What if I become blind tomorrow? I can. Mm. What if I lose all my hair and I become bald and you are infatuated by my hair? All shallow. I say to people, look at the person you're looking for, look at their personality, but that you can't find with a tick box. You have to really discuss deeper issues. And deeper issues are personalities. And I talk about this throughout my book. I'm pretty certain you'll be mentioning it later on.
I certainly will. But another tip you give, which, and this really took me by surprise when I read it, because I thought this is something that would never cross my mind, I'm sure many other people's minds as well. And that is, if you do meet somebody and you feel that they might be the right person for you, to establish the other person's true identity. I didn't realize it was that much of an issue. To establish their identity.
Huge issue, Asad. I have come across many people who are stung pretty badly because in the Muslim society, we're not allowed to date in the conventional sense of the word before marriage. We have to find somebody, we have to get married, and it's only after marriage we can really establish a relationship. And in Islam, 3 things are essential. One is the person's true identity. The other one is person's family identity. And the third is the person's reference. Often people make this mistake. They don't really establish the person's identity. I'll give you an example. One amazing girl I was helping to do her Knicker. I went there, I did some pre-marriage interviews with them to see if they're all okay. Something in my heart says something is not adding up. Something is not adding up. And I told the family, something is not adding up about this guy. They said, oh, it's all right. They're in love. Everything will be fine. They ignored my advice. Anyway, I did the Knicker. 6 months into the marriage, everything unraveled itself. This guy has done this as a serial, I don't know what to call him, but he gets married to girls with false identities, does 6 months of that marriage and then moves on to the next and moves on to the next, and done it 4 times before. He said he had converted to Islam. The very basic thing the family should have done is, where did he convert? I converted in this mosque. Pick up the phone and say, did this person convert? I did this when their marriage broke down. I called up that mosque and I spoke to the imam of the mosque. Do you remember this person? Do you have a certificate? Do you have any recollection? Does anyone in your mosque know this person converting to Islam? You know what they said? No. with no knowledge of such a person. So
That's
immediate one check, I said, one check established the fact that this person was lying. Then I asked the family, where does he live? Oh, he's got families in America. Have you been? Have you met them? Have you seen them, spoken to them? No. So identity of the person means I say, get their passport, make sure they do have one, or an ID that is verifiable. Get a reference, two people who know them well. It can't be a cousin or a friend. It has to be people who can give objective reference. Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu said to a man who said, I can give reference. He said, did you live with him? No. Did you travel with him? No. Did you do business with him? No. Umar said, you're disqualified. You can't give me references for marriages unless you know the person. So ID, reference, and family background.
That's some good tips. I really didn't realize it was that much of an issue, but it clearly is. And
in the internet age, Asad, it is an issue because I can create fake IDs just like that. People are meeting on the internet, websites, apps. I can create anything I want. How would you know? And it is a sad thing that some of the apps or some of the introduction agencies don't ask for genuine ID that can be verified. It's very sad. Anyway, it's a discussion for another time.
But that is an interesting one. You mentioned the internet, the way things are done these days. One thing which I have noticed, I'm sure you have noticed, as have many others, is that there seems to be, for some people, an issue about finding the right person. Now, it could be due to the list situation that you mentioned earlier. It could be due to other reasons. Why do you think so many young people, Muslim young people in particular, although it's wider in society as well, are struggling to find that right person when there are so many single people looking to get married? Why is it just not happening? Why is that connection not going on?
Because of the first thing I said, in Islam, we're not allowed to do, in quote unquote, that kind of dating. So people are very afraid. They're not sure what to do. How do I do this? Haram, halal, parents, society. So many confusion that needs to be clarified. And I do that in this book quite categorically at the end. How to meet somebody, how to take it further, how to involve your families, how to get married. I do an entire section on this. So it's about getting rid of that myth in our community. Secondly, our parents have said everything is haram in some families. Oh, can't meet a girl, can't talk to a boy. What can I do? And parents haven't given an alternative avenue. They haven't introduced. The mosques haven't created a space where boys and girls can meet in a social halal setting, which is healthy, where they can interact and get to know one another. So where they're meeting is often in their schools or workplace and often secretly. It doesn't help. So psychologically, if you've got a secret relationship going, something dodgy is already happening. And you can't really make up your mind on such a fundamental principle of life called marriage in such a secretive, almost, I don't know, guilt feeling driven environment. So that's the second problem. The third problem is in our society, when everything is available so openly and readily, lots of Muslim boys and girls who on one hand have a face in front of their families and friends, but behind the scene, behind the faces, lies a very deep and dark side where they may be having already lots of relationships. So they're confused as to what to do. I have a relationship. I've got a girlfriend, a boyfriend. It's an active relationship. My parents want me to get married to my cousin or somebody who's Muslim. I'm not sure how to break that and start new. Should I continue? I have no idea what to do. So this constant conflict is a problem. And I say to young Muslims or anyone else, don't destroy your soul in this way. Whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, it doesn't make any difference. Your heart deserves better. When you find somebody who meets what you're looking for and what you're offering, matches, and the person's references have been obtained, in other words, the ID, reference, family background, sounds all good, before you get your hearts involved and your brain becomes therefore blinded by the fact that you are in love, get your parents involved. Let them actually objectively see what's going on. Let third party help you.
And as well, I'm just going to interrupt there because another bit of advice you give in your book is to not procrastinate, not put off a decision. Tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, that's so important, Ron. Many sisters complain that the guys are just dragging and dragging and dragging, not making a decision, and we're just waiting. Again, a very cruel thing to do, inhuman thing to do, in my view. Somebody's waiting with expectations and hope. Even if there was no expectation and hope, if somebody's just dangling on a thin thread because you are going to say yes or no, it's not fair. So as soon as you've met somebody, in my view, what you haven't found within that person within the first 3 months, you can never find anything more afterwards. For basic foundation of a marriage, 3 to 6 months of getting to know that person, their family, in a halal manner is enough. Don't procrastinate over it. If you want to pursue it, say yes. If you don't want to pursue it, say no. In between is a very painful time. And a lot of people who are not sure about themselves, a lot of people who are hiding lots of things often procrastinate.
Yeah, and as well, I'm going to bring in a question which has been sent in while you've been speaking, and I'm going to jump to this because it is actually a very good question. And you being an imam as well here in London, this is perfect for you. And it says, how many times have people's feelings about a couple been incorrect? And then they ask, is it the job of an imam, someone like yourself, to question the couple about their suitability for each other?
It is a very important principle that Malaysia has introduced. I think also Singapore, I think, and maybe even Indonesia, but I know it definitely in Malaysia, that you can't get married unless you do a pre-marriage course. And part of your course is to attend a program to learn about marriage, to get grilled and questioned by trained therapists, imams, or qadi who knows what they're doing. And I think it's important to do this. So when people come to see me in my pre-marriage counseling program, I actually make their life quite difficult by asking very tough questions. And sadly, I've seen, and not sadly, but fortunately for some, that they have actually decided not to get married because of the course. After the course, they said, you know what, we're not suitable for one another. We were just not really looking into it properly. I did a course only recently where a couple did the entire 10 session program, and then they decided they're not going to get married. Yeah. So it's very important that we help people not break them up or break them apart, but help them to see through, because sometimes they're not seeing through.
But I'm also wondering, Ajmal, sorry to interrupt again, but I'm also wondering that it can almost sound very clinical what you're saying. Shouldn't an element of this be left to the heart and to listen to what the heart is telling you when you meet someone, rather than perhaps go to an imam or sit down and ask these questions or whatever?
There are two indicators, Prophet ﷺ said. He said, when you know something is wrong, in that which wavers in your heart. And when you know something that is right, is that which is firm in your heart. So sometimes when things are wavering in the heart, there is a part of our brain that says, don't listen to it. And people, when they don't listen to the wavering heart and fall victim of the whispers in their head, the two monkeys I call, the good and the bad fights, people make that mistake. And the second thing, when I was doing my marriage training course, my trainer asked me, where is marriage in your body? When you think about marriage, where do you think about marriage from? I said, head. When you think about love, where do you think about love from? I said, heart. So she said, 70% of people in the UK get married because of love. And where is love? Is in the heart. And where is marriage? Is in the brain. So if marriage is in the brain and you got married because of the heart, you've already got a disconnect. What Islam says is consult your heart and your brain and use them two together with the right information, support from others, referencing, friends and families, but most importantly, your parents. Our parents know more than we do, and we learn this when we become parents ourselves. My father met my wife, and my father said to me, I think you should marry her. I said to him, why, Dad? He said, because she is a daughter of a human being. I said, what kind of a nonsensical statement is that? We're all daughters and sons of human beings. And in Bengali, son of a human being or a daughter of a human being, said in Bengali actually means she is coming from a good civilized family background. And I tell you, Asad, those words were very powerful for my father. I understood that my father approved, not that his approval is essential. I never advocate that, but his blessing is very important. So he was blessed it, and he checked the girl and he liked the girl. And I'm so happy he did. 20 years on, that element of my wife, which is her compassion, her kindness, and her humanity, these are overwhelming traits of her personality that dominates my relationship even today.
And that's wonderful to hear. Another part of your book, or which you do incorporate in the various chapters, is not just about finding the right person and those initial steps in order to get married, but also about staying married, hence the title of your book. And one of the things that I like to read on page 70 of your book, where you say, love is rewarded by Allah, even a hug, being kind and tender are rewarded. A lovely thing to write about, but just try and sum up, if you can, and this is a really tough question for you, the key points about staying happily married.
I think you've also touched on something that we don't want to talk about, but I will talk about it. It's called emotional intelligence. Now, I don't want you to answer necessarily, but if you feel comfortable, you can. When you were growing up, did you ever see your parents hug or kiss or touch? I didn't. Never. In my 50 years of life, 45 years of which my father was alive, I did not see my parents ever touch, hug, or kiss. So how do I learn how to hug, how to kiss, how to touch somebody who's so significant in my life if I've never seen a role model in my entire life as growing up? In our communities, it's considered haram. We don't do that. We do it privately. No, brothers and sisters, you're wrong. Prophet ﷺ and the companions were known to hold the hands of their spouse. Prophet ﷺ used to hug his wife and give her a kiss. And these things were not private in the private sense of the word. So emotional intelligence is what I understood from your question to be more important lesson that we should be learning. So as parents, we should be teaching our children. And in our relationship, that constant expression of love, touching, hugging, the warmth that is expressed by human contact. Pandemic is a good example. We have not been seeing one another. We can't touch, we can't give hugs, and we're missing them. Our hearts and souls crying out for them. If you are staying with somebody in a relationship, it's so important. So the way to survive a marriage is to keep a love box alive. I call it a love bank, in which you keep on depositing lots and lots of hugs, kisses, gifts, touches, the acts of generosity, good time, laughter. This is your love box, the bank account in which you deposit. On a rainy day, when you've had a bad time with your wife, in my case, if I had an argument, I can draw on from my bank and it's not going to be empty. But if I have nothing in the bank account, and on a rainy day, I'm looking to draw on some favors, there'll be nothing. So to survive, express your emotions more often. Tell your wife or your husband you love them. Touch them, hug them, kiss them, hold their hands and walk. Show this to your children so that they know how to do it too. Emotional intelligence is learned at home and expressed at home between the couples.
Yeah, it's actually quite simple advice, but important advice you give. Prophet
ﷺ said, when you hold on to your wife's hand or your husband's hand, who is halal for you, all your small sins just keep on dropping off.
Alhamdulillah.
What a beautiful way to express it.
That is a very beautiful way. And Jamal, we are getting so many questions in. I've got so many questions I do want to ask you still, but I'm going to chop between them now. So here's a question for you: Why is age such a factor in the Islamic marriages? The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, married a woman, Khadija, 15 plus years older than him. So why is age such an issue these days when it comes to Islamic marriages?
Well, that's a problem. Age is not a factor in Islamic marriages. Age is a factor in some Muslims who have become slightly ageist, if that's a correct word. Unfortunately, it stems from cultural upbringing. It stems from, I suppose, some expectations people have, societal expectations. It's all a myth. Prophet ﷺ got married to Khadija, 15 years older than her. He married her because she was an amazing woman. She actually proposed to him. She gave Rasul ﷺ 6 or 7 or even 8 children, depends on which narration you want to follow. All his sons died, but all his daughters survived. And Fatima is one of the most famous ones, as we know. So Prophet ﷺ had not 1, but 8 children from Khadija, who was 15 years older than him. And he never married anybody else because she was his mentor. She was his financier, business guru, companion, life, wife, mother, everything that you can think of. Later on, when Aisha used to make remarks of jealousy, Prophet ﷺ used to get very upset because Khadija was such an amazing woman. He actually said to Khadija one day, when there was nobody in the world to support me, there was Khadija. When the entire world abandoned me, there was Khadija giving all her money to save the Muslim community. If it wasn't for Khadija giving every single penny she had, we probably won't have what we have today. So I want to say to our community, please don't be ageist when it comes to considering somebody for marriage. But there is also a sociological issue that we can't ignore. And this is where I become more than frank. I become a bit slightly brutal. So if you think I'm being brutal, please forgive me. It's not intended. When I'm looking to get married, I got married when I was 25. My age group of suitable ladies would be around my age, 25, 24, 23, 26, whatever age group. Alhamdulillah, I found somebody slightly younger than me, 22 or 23, I can't remember exact age. We got married. So 2-3 years gap, no problem. When I get to 30, and unfortunately, when I got married second time around, I was 28. My age group of ladies would already be married, most of them. They would be already settled. So I won't be able to find somebody suitable for my age group because they're married. So I say to people, don't delay marriage, because your age group of people who are suitable for your age and profile and for your ambitions and et cetera, to be your companion, intellectual connection, emotional connection, spiritual, physical connection, it requires slight age connection as well. Even if there are bigger gaps, it's no problem. But more likely that you would have missed on the group of people who are your age group. And that's where we are seeing at the moment. A lot of people are unfortunately stuck in a particular age where nobody is actually showing any interest. Very unfortunate, very sad. Mm-hmm. We have to do something. But I can't force generosity on people. I can't go and say to a guy or a girl, get married to somebody older than them. I can only educate them, which is what I'm doing. But I also want our people to have some reality checks. Please don't delay it. As soon as you're ready, which should not be any more than the Sunnah of Rasulullah, 25. I believe 25, 24 is brilliant age to get married. And I'm so grateful to Allah that I did get married at the age of 24. And I, alhamdulillah, have survived marriage, even though my first marriage failed, but I learned and grew with it, alhamdulillah.
That's a good question and a good answer there. Thank you, Ajmal. Another question from a viewer. My question is, how do you know if a person is the right match for your son or daughter? Especially as Islam doesn't allow the free mixing of boys and girls. So how can you get to know one another to see, excuse me, to see if they are truly well suited? As a parent, this really worries me, this person says.
Well, the question is wrong. Do you know why the question is wrong?
Go on.
How do we know if the person is suitable for my son or my daughter? Well, you shouldn't be knowing that. Your son or daughter should be deciding that for themselves. That's the problem. If you start deciding for them, then you're already starting wrong. You as a parent have a responsibility to guide them, help them to make the right decision, but they have to make the right decision by themselves. If you haven't imparted them that skill or those skills, the knowledge, the abilities to be able to establish right from wrong, then there's something else that you need to be working on. But as parents, your role is not to impose a spousal partner or a choice, nor is it for you to decide, it's for them to decide. So that's the first thing. Secondly, how do we help our children to find the right spouse and how do they get to know? Read the entire chapter towards the end of the book as to all of that, because it's quite detailed. In Islam, I'm allowed to meet a man or a woman from, if I'm looking for a woman, as a man, I would be looking for a woman I need to follow some guidelines. Guideline number one in Islam is never meet the person that you're about to meet of the opposite sex in a private space. Never meet them in a private space. Rasulullah said, the scope for shaitan to be there is huge because you're in private, nobody's seeing you, so don't do that. Number two, when you do meet, never become physical. Keep your physical elements of relationship far away from your initial consideration. And third, reference. Before you go anywhere, make sure this person is who he or she is claiming to be. Once you've done all of that, then getting your parents involved is amazing. Then getting the nikah, which is called the engagement according to Islam, according to Asian culture is marriage, but marriage is only when nikah is consummated. So in my view, once everything is ready, then you should do the nikah and call it an engagement and write it on a piece of paper. We will not consummate our marriage. We'll be engaged for a particular period of time. And within that period of time, we will meet, we'll talk because we are halal for one another. We've done the nikah. Because we're not going to consummate it, if after that considering period of 6 months, 3 months, whatever, it doesn't work, you can just walk away. In Islam, it's not a marriage. It's not even a divorce. You've just broken an engagement. Allah has provided easy answer to the question. The Asian community has complicated it badly. So complicated it so badly that we want the nikah, the rukhsati as they call it, the living together, moving together, all in one go, and no, it's all haram for them to meet and talk. You're making life difficult. Get them engaged and let them meet and talk and find out. If they're not compatible, if they can't get along, if things are not working out after trying everything, they can go in their own ways without getting it registered as a marriage and a divorce. It's not. So it's a difficult question. I'm really sorry that I've complicated the answer, but it's important that you understand. As a parent, you're not responsible to get them married. As a parent, you can't force them to get married. As a parent, you're only responsible for helping them, that's all. Guiding them, that's all. And as a child or as a man or a woman, when you do want to get married, make sure you go and you don't meet them in private, don't have physical relationship, don't get physically involved, and reference them, and then everything else becomes easy.
Thank you for that, Ajmal. I've got some more questions coming in from viewers as well. But before I ask you the next question from them, I do want to ask you this question there, because towards the end of your book, there's also a section on what you've titled Forbidden Marriages, Secret Marriages and Temporary Marriages. This was something that, again, a bit like doing checks on people that you meet, I'd not really heard of. Tell us a bit about this. And what I want to know is, how widespread is this then? Forbidden marriages.
So in our society today, people are coming up with all sorts of clever and creative ways of bypassing and almost, what's the word? Okay, but let's say bypassing Islamic law. Let's be a polite word. Some people are getting married secretly. They're not letting know anyone that they're married. They're getting their friends, 2 witnesses. They do their own nikah and they're living together. We're married, but nobody knows. Haram in Islam. Marriage must be public information. It is clearly established from all the Islamic law that you cannot be secretly married. Number 2 is some people are getting into temporary marriage arrangements. So I find somebody, we agree that we'll be married for 3 months, 2 months, 2 hours, 1 hour, and then we do a contract. It's no different than glorified prostitution in my view. Haram again in Islam. Even if you're Shia or Sunni, I don't mind. It's glorified prostitution. You should not be practicing it. I will not allow that to my daughter. I will not allow that for my son. Why should I turn a blind eye to it when people do it? Number 3 is called misyar marriage, where it is very popular in the Middle East, where a man or a woman, they come together and they get married for convenience. The man does not have to tell his wife that he's marrying her for convenience. So he's come to the UK and he's going to be studying here for 4 years. He gets married to a local woman, doesn't tell her that this is misyar marriage, marriage of convenience. After a few years, when he finishes his degree, he's going to divorce and go back. A marriage with the intention of divorce is haram. Marriage should not be with the intention of divorce. That nullifies the concept of marriage. So misyar marriage is again an abuse of marriage done by people who think they can get away with it. I've dealt with many clients, especially our convert sisters, our revert sisters. They get misled and duped into some of the very rich people from the Middle East who come here, do their studies, get married, and then 4 years later, they leave. 5 years later, they leave. So those are the 3 that I've listed. I think I've listed a few more. Temporary marriage, secret marriage, misyar marriage. Stay away from them. They're evil, they're destructive, they're abusive. They leave people feeling used, cheap, and sadly, you will never allow that for your daughter or your son.
And you've said you've come across women and people who've been victims of this type of marriage. So this is going on in this country, in the UK.
Yeah. In the university campuses, a lot of young kids, our kids, are saying, I'm Muslim. You know what? I'm going to adopt the temporary marriage from the Shia brothers and sisters because it's a known practice within some Shia community called mut'ah. And some Sunnis are doing this in the universities, in campuses, getting married. What's the difference between this and prostitution? I'm going to marry you for 5 minutes. I'm going to marry you for an hour. What nonsense is that? It happens in the universities and people come and tell me about it. I also have dealt with several cases of misyar marriage. One particular case was devastating when the sister who became Muslim actually left Islam because of the abuse. She said, if this is what Islam allows, I'm leaving Islam. I ended up having counseling. I've counseled her for a long time. She never overcame this abuse. And of course, secret marriage. Secret marriage is probably the worst one, where the worst victim of it are usually women. Men have it their way. They just leave after a while. Nobody knows. The woman has no right. They may have children. The children have no right. No legal recourse, nothing. left in a limbo, in a state of absolute use and abuse. May Allah protect us from this. We just have to do everything possible to warn our children not to get involved. If you find a girl you like or a boy you like, be a brave human being. Have the courage of the conviction that you have. Get married to them. Respect them and honor them. That's the least you can do. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Sound very strong.
No. It's very strong, but a good reason to be very strong. These are terrible things when people fall victim to these types of marriages. Let me ask you a question, which again another viewer has sent in. A mother talking about her daughter, and she wants to know what should she do if the daughter has been talking to and met with a prospective partner who's compatible in terms of aspirations, similar backgrounds, etc., but missing, and this is what she refers to as the click, or as Simon Cowell would probably call the X factor when singing. So if it's missing the click, how important is the click? And should she hold out until she meets someone whom she has this click with?
Can I just debunk this myth of click? Click actually is a myth. In psychological terms, anyone who is a marriage expert will tell you click doesn't really exist. It grows eventually. I love my wife more every day. That's a click. I love my husband more every day. That's called a click. That's why Allah says in the Quran, and let me give you the verse, when Allah says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. I can give you an entire lecture on this one verse, but I'll just give you a quick summary. Allah says, and amongst His signs is that He has created a mate from amongst yourselves, so that you might find rest with them. And so Allah can put between the two of you love and mercy. There are signs for those who reflect. 5 simple lessons Asad in this one. 5 lessons. It is Allah's miracle that He has created me and my wife. Miracle number 1. Miracle number 2, it is Allah's miracle that He has created a partner like me, another human being. Number 3, Allah has created marriage for me so that I can create a safe space for my wife and I to grow. A safe space. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. I and my wife can live in a safe space. Number 4, so that Allah can put between the two of us in that safe space love and mercy from the heavens. And number 5, there are signs for those who constantly evaluate their marriage. If you read this verse in this way, Allah has created you and me as humans. Be grateful. Allah has created you a spouse just like you. Be kind, respectful. Allah has said the purpose of marriage is to create a safe space. Create a safe space. Do your bit. And then Allah says, if you do your bit, I will give you my bit, which is love and mercy. And if Allah gives you love and mercy and you've created the right space and you're reflective, hey, pronto, you're successful. There is no need for a click. This artificial concept called click is all based on the novels that we read, the Cinderella stories that we have, and all the rest of the stories that we see on our television screens from Hollywood and Bollywood movies that we watch. Not
as well, some people would say that if they're meeting prospective partners, that with maybe one or another person, there is that click. They're feeling something. What is it they're feeling?
It's called feeling positive. It's called feeling positive about that person. It's not going to. So if I say there is a click for everybody, then I'm creating an expectation which is not real for everybody. Not everybody falls in love before they get married, Asad. And not everyone's understanding and experience of love is the same, because this is one word that everybody loves to have and uses as an expectation, but nobody can define them. So I don't want to talk about something that is not tangible, not definable, not specific enough. What I say to people is, what Allah is talking about, for the marriage to survive, you need to be together, creating the right space. So you need to look at your wife or your husband. Can she or he help me create the space where I can connect with her and him intellectually? Number 1, connection number 1, intellectual connection. Ask me this question. Do I feel intellectually connected to my wife? Yes, I do. We read books together, we watch films together, we discuss the world together, we debate politics together, we have an intellectual connection. And if I didn't have an intellectual connection with her, I would have left a long time ago. And she would have left me a long time ago because we would have been bored stiff. So intellectual connection. Physical connection. When I say physical connection, I don't mean sexual connection. I mean physically present in the relationship. Can I be physically present? Is she physically present in this relationship? Can she rely on me? Can I rely on her? It's called the leaning theory. Can we lean on one another? Number 3, emotional connection. Can we have sufficient ground? Are we emotionally intelligent enough to create an emotional space where we can be safe? Number 4, spiritual connection. Does my wife and I, do we have similar outlook to spirituality? According to psychologists and specialists on marriage, they've said people who have similar spiritual background and similar spiritual outlook in life, their marriages last longer. And number 5, sexual connection. My brothers and sisters, if you can create a space that is safe in all of those 5, you have got the click already. And you will not be able to experience that click unless you are married. And therefore, you look for the positive trait, you see what is working, you consult your brain and your heart, you do the referencing, you speak to your parents, and you make sure you do the right thing. Once you've decided, then rely on Allah. Then you tie your camels. Don't leave your camels untied.
Okay, Ajmal, the questions are coming thick and fast. So I'm just going to run through a few of them now, try and get through as many as possible. But do keep those questions coming in. We are looking at them all. The next one is, I think you've answered this, Ajmal, but for clarity, you may want to just summarize the answer again. The question is, what does Ajmal mean by an engagement nikah? Please elaborate.
So in Islam, the way we understand nikah, actually, according to Islam, has 2 steps. First step is the engagement period, and second step is when it consummates. In other words, you have the marriage itself. So when a boy or a girl, they meet together and they want to get married, according to Islam, according to the Sunnah, you should do the nikah, which means they are both allowed to meet in private, they're allowed to meet and discuss, they are allowed to even consummate their marriage if they're happy with it. So it's called engagement period. In Islam, in the engagement period, what is recommended that they should not consummate their marriage. In other words, they should not have any sexual relationship with one another. So if you don't have sexual relationship and you meet and you talk and you spend time together without becoming intimate, you are engaged. After an engagement period which has been agreed, if you are happy, then you say to your parents or your families, we're happy to move in together. We're going to consummate our marriage. We're going to be a couple. It's called rukhsati in Asians. We move in. So combine nikah and rukhsati and separate them with a time frame. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying nikah is invalid. Nikah is valid. It gives your child, your son, your daughter, a space to consider the other person in a halal way without getting into trouble.
Okay, thanks for that, Ajmal. I'm going to go straight on to the next question because, like I said, there are a few to get through here. The point about references, this person says, is weak. Like employers' references, they can easily hide the truth. Who can, in good conscience, write something negative about someone if you ask them to? I kind of see where they're coming from on this. If you've asked somebody who knows this person well for a reference, well, surely it's going to be a good one anyway, isn't it?
No. Rasul said, if you're a believer, you should know this. Rasul said, if somebody comes to you for a marriage reference, you're allowed to backbite. You're allowed to tell the negative and the positive. In fact, you're duty bound to tell the negative and the positive because this becomes a trust now. If somebody comes to me, and I'll give you my practical example. I've received many people who come to me and say, can you please give me a reference for this person because this person says they know you. So I will say to this person, I'm going to give you a reference, positive and negative. Promise me, most importantly, the reference that I'm going to give you will remain private and confidential, will never be disclosed to anybody. If they give me that promise, then I will give them all the positive and the negative traits of this individual because I know this individual has come for a marriage reference. Now, if somebody doesn't provide objective marriage reference, they're not qualified to do that in the first place, and they've actually committed a sin because making a statement, a witness statement is like this, you cannot falsify it. So yes, therefore Rasul's advice is go to somebody who is wise, who understands the concept of referencing, who can give you guarantee that they will give you positive and negative traits, and you can give them guarantee that you will not abuse this, you will not let this information be known in public. After your reference, if it doesn't go anywhere, you just bin it, throw it in the bin. And you should ask for 2 references at least, not 1, 2 people. And they should not be somebody who just know them in the mosque. Oh, I've seen him in the mosque, he comes and prays. Oh, he's got a good beard, he must be a good guy. Or she's wearing hijab, she must be a good girl. No, none of that. A person who you have traveled with, a person who you have lived with, a person who you have studied with, a person you have done business with, those kind of people who can give references. And I believe a teacher is a good referee, but objectively. Tell them I'm looking for a marriage reference and I want positive and negative.
Okay, thanks for that, Ajmal. Next question from a viewer is, if you meet a partner and get on very well with them, but they come with baggage, should you consider them as a serious candidate, even though you don't like aspects of their past, such as they say that they've dated lots of people?
Very good question. We all have baggages. That's the answer to that question. My brother or sister, you also have a baggage. Your baggage may not be, may not be the same as theirs, but don't be holier than thou. We all have sins. We all have mistakes and weaknesses. If Allah was to expose all our mistakes and weaknesses, we will never be able to get married to anybody. So that's the first thing. Secondly, don't discriminate a person because of their sin. The sin is between them and Allah. Let them repent. If Allah is giving them a chance, why are you not giving them a chance? Why are you why are you being so unkind? Third, and this is very important, if I have a baggage, Asad, and if I haven't dealt with it, then it's going to come and haunt me in my relationship, in any relationships that I have in the past. So if somebody comes to me and says, I have a baggage from the past, my first question is, have you dealt with it? If you have dealt with it, please tell me, what have you done? When I got married and my marriage ended in a divorce, my wife asked me, what did you do about it? I said, I became a marriage counselor as a result of it. Not only did I get therapy, but I've become a therapist. She said, Alhamdulillah, you've dealt with your past. We can all deal with our past through therapy, through correction, through repentance, through connection, and making sure that we don't carry those baggages with us. So if somebody comes and says, I've dealt with my baggages, and gives you the reasons, and they've repented for their mistakes, please be kind. For if you're not going to be kind to somebody on this earth, on the day of judgment, you will be stuck, right? If you forgive somebody, Allah will forgive you. If you're kind to somebody, Allah will be kind to you. Don't allow baggages to be a burden or a tool to beat the other person. And don't forget, you also have a baggage.
Yeah, that's a really great answer. Ajmal, I'm going to move straight on to the next question. We have got so many coming in. This is fantastic because they are really good questions like that last one. And this one is, if a young person doesn't know a suitable person in their own social circle, how and where does Ajmal suggest they find someone? Online seems like a frightening space. And that is another good question. Young people do get stuck with this. How do you go about meeting someone?
Online is a very frightening space because you don't know who the other person is. There are lots of online trawlers, online convicts who are putting up their, we're talking about sexual convicts, etc., etc. So it's very difficult, I know. But those who provide online services, the onus is on them to do references. I believe they should do a proper DBS check on each and every person who joins an online marriage program, an extensive and enhanced DBS check. Did you know we have to do them as imam on a regular basis? So why not a DBS, a proper enhanced DBS check on a marriage website, so people are not frightened? The person who is joining a marriage website should also have established their ID that is verifiable. Okay, let's move on to the question itself. The person who's asked, where do you meet? Unfortunately, I can't give you one answer. You can meet them at work. You can meet them at universities. You can meet them at your mosque. You can meet them online. You can meet them at functions. You can meet them at a street. I'll give you a great example. One day, a brother with his friend, they were on a bus. They were going somewhere. And he saw a girl walking on the street. He said to that guy, I like that woman. I'm going to marry her. He goes, you're mad. How are you going to marry her? She's on the road. You're on a bus. You're moving. He goes, just watch. He literally gets off at the next bus stop. He waits for that lady to come to the bus stop. He has written on a piece of paper his number, and he says to the sister, sister, my name is, this is my number. I don't want you to call me, and I don't want your number. Can you please give this number to your dad? And say, a man stopped me on the street and said, he's interested in marrying me, but he doesn't want to talk to me first. He wants to talk to you. Here is his number. The sister was absolutely flabbergasted by this experience. She froze, kept the piece of paper in her hand, and the guy walked off. She went home and gave this piece of paper to her father. Father looked at the number, looked at the name, and heard the story. He said, interesting, let me call him. He called him, invited him to his house, had a long conversation. 6 months later, they're married.
Alhamdulillah.
20 years later, 4 children, happily married. Now look at the beauty about this man. He found a woman that he thought would be suitable for him. He did not chase his lust or his desire. He instantly took the halal step, told the sister beautifully, please give my number to your father, let him call me. I don't want you to think I'm a predator. I'm genuine, I'm real, I'm here, I don't want to run away. I'm saying there are people like that you don't ever know. It's about the approach you make. If your approach is illicit, if your approach is dodgy, then unfortunately the outcome will be dodgy. Get your approach right. The world is open for you to meet anybody in any place from any nationality. I told my children only yesterday, they're young, 12 and 14. I said, my children, you can marry anybody from any part of the world, as long as they're Muslim and good in their character. That's all.
That's all you need. Ajmal, we've only got a few minutes left. I'm going to try and get a couple more questions in if I can. The next one is from a viewer. It says, society and expectations put too many pressures on a guy who's 24, 25, who may not be able to provide a girl with what she's after because of the pressures which society put on. How do you deal with that? Well,
21st century world, it's impossible for one person to provide everything for a person. It's impossible. So it has to be a joint effort. But Allah says that in the Quran already. And I'm going to explain this to you, Asad and everybody. But I would like you to not curtail the questions. It's not even 1 o'clock. Let's extend a bit more if you have the time. Let's see if we can take some more questions from people. People will kill me afterwards saying, why didn't you answer? Anyway, coming back to the question about this partnership. Allah says in the Quran very beautifully, Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahunna. They're your garment and you're their garment. Now, Asad, that's such a beautiful analogy. Do you know why? Imagine a garment. My shirt here is composed of each fabric, a thread interwoven, pulled together, tight. It's when it becomes a garment, a shirt. One thread on its own is not a garment. Marriage is like that. Two people become interwoven, weave together, pulled, strengthened. Together they become a partnership. Such a partnership that they are interdependent. They cover each other. They envelop each other. They drape one another like a beautiful garment does. They protect each other. They beautify one another. They keep everything private and confidential. They don't tell the world. They give warmth. They give coolness. They give comfort. And they're never perfect, because no garment is ever perfect. So Allah uses that analogy to inspire in ourselves a culture of partnership. So don't look at your man or your woman to provide you everything. It's impossible. You provide one another support and help. In Islam, it is true that men are given responsibility by Allah to provide for their family financially. Because, of course, of maternal reasons, she will not be working when she is a mother, maybe she's pregnant, etc. And if she chooses to stay at home, and if a brother is struggling, then they need to have that conversation. There is nothing written in stone in this kind of a partnership, but it must be a partnership between two people.
And in your book, I know you talk about the modern expectations on couples and how to adapt towards it. So women are maybe working more and how you make it work together, but you're adapting marriage to a modern day.
Prophet married a working woman, a businesswoman, Khadija. She chose not to marry, not to be a businesswoman afterward, because she gave it over to Prophet ﷺ to deal with, right? It's up to you. But in the modern world, what you can't be having is everything. You can't have your cake and eat it, my brothers and sisters. The pressures are different. The challenges are different, and we need to be realistic about it. So if your wife is working and you're working together, husband and wife working together, then make contributions equally from domestic work, cooking, cleaning, contribution to bills, payments, make them all equal. If you're working and your wife isn't working, then you're responsible. Divide up the responsibilities. It is unfair for a husband or a wife to have one of the spouses working full-time outside and one of the spouses staying at home. And then when the spouse from work comes home, you expect the spouse to cook and clean at the same time. That's unfair. In the Quran, what Allah says and emphasizes on is a just and a fair relationship. Be just and fair with one another. You will find Allah. And if you find Allah, you're successful.
Alhamdulillah. Right. You did say we can carry on for another few minutes and you're happy with that. I hope
I'm happy with it.
Joining us on YouTube are happy with this as well, because the questions are coming in.
By the way, you are not saying it, but I'm going to have to say this, because the charity that is doing this, we have to also do something for them. So brothers and sisters, if you buy the book today online on our Facebook page, which is our page, that's barefootinstitute.com/bookstore, 20% of all book sale will go to GLT, that is Graham Layton Trust. Every book that you buy, 20% goes, and that will help somebody see the world again. So I want to repeat this. We've spoken for an hour and I've not mentioned it. I would like you to buy as many books as you can. Buy 1, 2, 3, 4, as many. Remember, we're going to be donating 20% of all our sales from this book for this period to this charity that I really support and I like. So please do buy.
Yeah, I'm glad you've mentioned that, Ajmal. And just to let everyone know, I've got my copy here, which Ajmal actually sent to me. So I didn't pay for it. And it's a signed copy as well. How cool is that? But because I didn't pay for it, before I started this chat today, I went on to the glt.org.uk website and donated some money to the charity, because what they do is extraordinary. And if you have a few moments, once you've watched this on YouTube, just type into YouTube the Graham Layton Trust and just have a look at 1 or 2 of the videos, if anything, of the work they do. It is extraordinary. And as Ajmal said, he is very generously donating a significant amount of the profits of the book which are sold today. So please take a look at it, and you'll get more understanding on the kind of areas that Ajmal has talked about over the past hour. Here's a question, Ajmal, now moving on, and this is another really good one. Should widows with children be encouraged to remarry?
Yes, widows, of course. Everybody should be encouraged to get married. Why would you like to live on your own? Why? Would you not like a little bit of love? Would you not like to share love, give love, receive love? So widows, everybody should get married, if they can, of course. If there are reasons why you can't get married, and Islam doesn't say it's an obligation upon everybody, it does stipulate some criteria, and I do cover it at the beginning of my book, what makes a marriage an obligation. However, if you've got issues, concerns, challenges in life, and you think marriage is going to make it worse, then no, you don't have to get married. But I do recommend widows, anybody on their own, should not live a life on their own. You know, the Arabic word insan, it means 2 things. Asad, I don't know whether you know the meaning of the word insan. It means human.
Sort of, yes. Yes, of course.
Human, of course. Yeah. But there are 2 original meanings to it. One is a group of people who forget. And the other one, a group of people who like to belong to a family. So Allah, by the label, the Arabic word insan, has given 2 intrinsic values for human. We belong to a family. We love loving. We love giving love. And this is through a family. So please don't miss on that opportunity.
Well, you say that, and there was another really interesting bit in your book, which I read on, I think it was about page 7. It was really early on in your book. And this I was surprised to read in a book about marriage and getting marriage. And you say very clearly that if someone fears that they will be harmful emotionally or physically to their prospective spouse, then marriage is forbidden to them. There's almost something quite beautiful in that, though.
Yes, it is in Islam. Very clear. Rasulullah said, marriage is forbidden for people who are emotionally and physically harmful to themselves and others. Marriage is forbidden for you because in Islam, protecting lives and lives of other people is more important. Of course, it's a tough challenge on people, and parents have to think about this. So, for example, if I have a physical disability which prevents me from fulfilling my marital duties, then I don't have to get married. There could be somebody who's out there for me who is happy to be married to me without the physical need being fulfilled. That's a different conversation. But not telling the other person about any. I've dealt with a case recently where one of the partners actually was physically unable to have an intimate relationship, physically unable. But they did not say that. They did not disclose this to the other person. Of course, as a sin. It's a sin not to disclose that. So Islam is very intricate and detailed. If you feel emotionally and physically harmful or unable, then it's okay for you to not get married. And it's difficult, I know, but it's okay. In fact, if you do and harm somebody else, it becomes haram for you.
Yeah, no, I thought that was beautiful because it acknowledges what is a problem. Just yesterday on the BBC, I was interviewing one of the directors of the charity Refuge, who was saying how during lockdown, domestic abuse and domestic violence has rocketed over this past year. It was so sad to hear some of the cases, but this is something that Islam acknowledges, and it says if you're one of these people who might be in that category where you you do abuse someone violently or otherwise, then don't get married. And that was interesting to read that point. As well, I'm going to ask you another question now. I might make this my last one. Please tell us which mosques offer registered marriages alongside a nikah.
I don't know any. There are some, but it's difficult to find them. So you'll have to do your own search, unfortunately. There is a challenge, and that challenge we need to overcome as soon as possible. But inshallah, with time, with the reform to the law, which when it comes to nikah and marriages, I think things will become easier. We've been lobbying the government saying, can you please make them the same? If nikah takes place, let that be a civil registration too. And government is listening. There is a consultation out right now. So maybe with time, this will change completely. But brothers and sisters, there is a fundamental reason why we get married in Islam. It's called our spiritual contract with Allah. And that's why the nikah is very important. So while civil registration is equally legally enforceable in our country, in the UK, spiritual nikah is very important. So in the UK or in the countries such as Europe and America, where nikah is not recognized as valid form, we do both. And we will have to lobby our government until they change their mind. But in a Muslim country, a nikah is a nikah, which is a valid marriage. So in this country, I don't know any mosques or in places that I can recommend to you by name. You do your search and you can find one. But remember again, and I did a Channel 4 documentary about this. I know you see your rival, but I'm sorry, I'm going to have to mention it. And that is, I said, a nikah without a civil registration is not a valid nikah because it's not enforceable. If purpose of marriage is to be able to enforce legal rights of the husband and the wife and the children, how do you enforce a nikah? So therefore, everyone who's getting married, please do your nikah and do your legal civil registration, and inshallah, you'll be safe.
Okay, Ajmal, I did say that was the last question. I lied because there's one that's coming which is related to the answer you've just given. And I think it's important. Do you need a divorce if you decide to walk away from the nikah without consummation of the marriage?
No. If the marriage has not consummated, in other words, if the couple have not had sexual relationship, then that marriage is considered to be not a marriage. What they do is they call it annulling the marriage rather than divorcing the marriage. Sharia councils, they know this very well. They will interview you first. And if there has been no sexual relationship, they will just issue you an annulment certificate to say this marriage was never, it never existed. It never validated itself. So therefore, it's not a marriage.
Okay.
And sadly, it does happen. Go on.
It does. Yeah, that is very sad. Ajmal, what a treat it's been to listen to you, and after reading your book, for you to elaborate on so many points in the way that you did and answer so many really terrific questions that we've had. That's been wonderful. I really do recommend people to read the book. It's a fascinating read, and like I say, it's an interactive book as well, so you can really properly get involved with it. And Ajmal is donating a significant amount of the profits today to the Graham Layton Trust. So well worth doing. Ajmal, final question from me now. Your 3 best tips for marriage. I wasn't going to make it easy for you, so go on.
No, you can't. Of course, the most important tip for marriage is positive mental attitude. You and your wife cannot survive, or you and your spouse cannot survive unless you're positive about life. If you wake up every morning and complain, doom and gloom every day is misery, every day is terrible, nobody can survive that. So work on your positive mental attitude, number 1. Number 2, love is not enough in a marriage. What you need is a lot of mercy. So combine them two together. Exercise love and mercy all the time, generously, more than you can imagine. And number 3, extreme amount of patience. Your wife or your husband will trigger you on left, right, and center. Often bite your tongue. I know it's difficult. There's a joke that I have to crack with you, and I've said it before, and I'll say it for the audience. We often say to each other that I have to listen to my wife, otherwise I'll be in trouble. Success to marriage is men listening to their wife and saying yes to everything. So there is a priest who said to his congregation, all those men who listen to your wife, move to the right side. And all the men moved to the right side. And amongst the women, there was a man. And the priest looked at him and said, why haven't you not moved? Guess what he said? Priest, my wife told me not to move. Now, this could be taken as a joke. But in Islam, it's not about one or the other. It's about listening to each other, right? That requires patience. So again, 3 things: positive mental attitude, lots of love and mercy, and lots of patience, you'll be successful, inshallah.
Ajmal Masroor, it's always such a pleasure to hear you, speak to you, and it's my honor to know you as a friend as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Asad, you're a very busy man. I'm very honored. And again, if people want to buy the book, the link to the book is barefootinstitute.com/bookstore. You can buy it from us. Inshallah, we will donate 20% of all the sales. And I will open up the door for whole weekend. We will do it all the way until Monday, Tuesday, no problem. As many books as we can sell. As long as people put in the promo code called GLT, even if they don't, I'll still donate for this whole weekend sale. GLT is your promo code. Go on the website, buy more. I want to be able to see if we can support this amazing charity. Do you know why I support this charity, Asad? Just so that I
go and tell us.
I once was forced into blindness. I know you're looking puzzled. Yeah. One of my eyes had a badminton injury. I was playing badminton and the racket hit my eyes very badly. So I went to the doctors, to the hospital, and they had to dilate my pupils in order to see the inside of both of them. So they put a drop in and they forcefully made me blind for 4 hours. So I could not see anything for 4 hours. It was the most unsettling time of my life. I've been through a lot in my life, but that was the most unsettling time ever, not to be able to see the world. Sitting there, everything is happening around me. I said, I can't see. I cried my eyes out, not being able to see. And I cried for those people who are blind. I think, Allahu Akbar, how do they cope? And I thanked Allah for giving me an eyesight. And when they put 2 drops again, and my pupil came back to normal and I could see again, I wanted to fall on the floor and thank Allah for giving me my eyesight back. Since that day, any charity that supports blind people's work or work for the eyesight, I always support them. And GLT is one of those brilliant ones.
It is one of those brilliant ones. And as they say, 80% of blindness is actually curable. So it is a tremendous work they do. Ajmal Masroor, thank you very much. What I'm going to do now is hand you back to the Chief Executive of the Graham Layton Trust, Nusrat Mirza. Over to you.
Thank you, Asad. Thank you, Ajmal, both of you. That's been really an amazing discussion, very enlightening. I certainly learnt so much. I think the separation of religious understanding from cultural has also been very important. I hope you viewers have also found this interesting and beneficial. So Asad, Ajmal, thank you so much for doing this, for taking time out of your own busy schedules. And ladies and gentlemen, our viewers and supporters, thank you so much for taking the time out to join us. And thank you for all your questions and for sparking such lively discussion. I think the gentlemen have said enough about their support for the charity. And so please, yes, of course, buy the book. But with Ramadan fast approaching, please also remember this charity in your future giving. Beyond that, what can I say? Stay well. I look forward to the time when we can all meet again. Have a real hug. Missed it a lot. Everybody take care. Thank you and Assalamu alaikum.